So, welcome to the course, and we're going to launch into the first chapter. Now, the first chapter really is a quick overview. It starts off with talking about some study skills and some ways to approach this course, and I think it's really worth your time to spend going through the first part of the chapter and really reflect on what's worked well for you in the past. Think of adopting maybe some new strategies. So, there's a lot that's in the first chapter. When it comes to that, the chapter will also go on and talk about some of the basics that we should know about things like the anatomical position, etc. So, we're doing an anatomy and a physiology course. In the past, often what happened is that they would separate the two. You do a human anatomy, human physiology, but we're doing a combined one. And there's some real advantages about doing the combined one because form and function go hand in hand in the human body. Now, as we're looking at this, we can see the slide. We can see that there's a definition of science. There's hundreds of different definitions. But, some of the things we could pull out from that is observing, measuring, making predictions, observations. And we can see some of those key words, observations, experimentation, imagination. Imagination is part of it. You have to sort of be able to reflect upon what you know and maybe what the possibilities are that may be an extension of your knowledge base. And also time. We forget time. Things don't happen overnight, and often ideas develop. They get refined. Some ideas get dropped as new evidence comes in. And that's really why science is a killer app, when it comes to humanity, is that we approach truth. We may never get to the truth, but we get there and we refine as we go. And that's really allowed us to do a lot of things. Now, not surprisingly, human anatomy is the study of structure of the human body, and physiology is the structure of its functions. And as I said earlier, form and function go hand in hand. Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this part of the chapter about develop study skills. You should read through it. You should reflect upon it. You should plan, right? But the one big thing is the one thing that really determines success is the amount of time you put into this. Is that this course will require lots of time on your behalf. Now, it's better to do small little time chunks frequently than trying to leave everything to the day before the exam. I'll tell you, that strategy of waiting until the day before the exam and doing a 12-hour study session is not the best. You're much better off just spending 15-20 minutes a day going over new material and maybe 15-20 minutes a day reflecting and going over some of the older material. And so frequency is the big determinant. And not surprisingly, visual modalities, can be used. Auditory modalities. This is why things like watching videos, because you both get the visual and the auditory stimuli. There's also tactile, hands-on. Things like dissections, working with the anatomical models are part of that. And there's also kinesthetic. Kinesthetic refers to movement. The root kino refers to movement. And this could be things like color coding, right? Color coding your class notes. Make textbooks reading active. Maybe you're going to do work pages, right? Draw diagrams. Repeat key lecture points aloud. There is something to be actually to speak out and talk and say the information because it invokes other parts of the brain. And the more parts of the brain we can invoke, the stronger the memory pattern seems to be. So draw, write, speak, solve problems, move during the lab. These are all really important things that can make you into a phenomenal learner. And we know, based on studies, that if you use multiple modalities to engage the senses, you're going to make more connections. And yes, when you learn, you're physically changing your brain. You're rewiring it, you're making new neural connections, and you're strengthening existing connections and how they work. Okay? So, now, the important thing is, every technique may not work for every student. So it's really important that you go through and you try them on, right? It's like trying on a pair of shoes. You try them on, go, don't like it. Move on to the next one. But at least you tried them on. Then you'll hit the ones you like, right? So branch out, try a variety of techniques until you find the one that is best for you. And you may also find that in some classes, like an English course, the techniques you use for an A&P course may not be the same. So flexibility as a learner is a really important thing. Now, there are, in your first part of the chapter, it goes through in detail. I'm not going to talk about it, but it does talk about how to read a textbook. Textbooks are brilliantly designed to help you learn. They're not something you just put out your money, put it on the table, and walk away and let dust cover it, and say, okay, I bought the textbook, and somehow through osmosis, that information is going to jump into my brain, right? You got to get in there and use it. We changed the textbook this year, and I think we spent quite a bit of time this summer as a faculty to go through and find what we thought was the best student-friendly, best designed textbook to make your learning efficient and effective. So in this chapter, they'll talk about the SQR 3R method. Have a look at that. I'm not going to walk through it. It's for something for you to have a look at. We can discuss it a bit more when we have our online lectures. But really what comes down to read actively, recite, and review. Okay, those are some of the key things. The other thing too is, as I said, it's all about time and managing your time. There's a really important point or part of this process of study on your own. But this is where I think a lot of students miss a great opportunity, and that is to meet with your study groups. Form a study group. Meet weekly. It could even be virtually, right? But what happens is when you meet in a study group, you become each other's support network. If you're struggling with something, one of your group members can help you and vice versa. And that's a very important part. Now remember, if you're going into healthcare, healthcare is a team activity. So this is a good time to really practice those team supportive, techniques. So get a study group together. And use other resources. I'm a resource, your textbook's a resource, there's online resources, our website's a resource, plus VCC. I'm very proud of my institution, is that we actually have a student resource center, we have a learning center, where we have tutors, and we actually have A&P tutors that can help you through the difficult or challenging parts of the course. And they're there to use. What's the cost? 0. When you signed up for the course, you're now covered. So that's a great resource. So use your resources. As I said, better to do small snippets. You can be even traveling, right? Just traveling on the train. 5-10 minutes of that. You work with groups. Maximize your study time. And this is really about you driving your learning forward. So also find out as much information as you can about the test, and I will share, information as to what the format of the test and sort of the general material. Take advantage of available resources, as we said, and form a study group. So we're kind of repeating what we said, but you notice when you're learning, it's often good to repeat, which is often why I'll come back and touch on previous subjects. Okay. So just become an effective learner. And the other thing too is, it's important. You will not be an effective learner unless you take care of yourself. And, good nutrition, get out for some exercise, do that stress management and sleep. Get good sleep, because many of your memories are really solidified during sleep. And so it's an important part of learning. It's kind of wild. Think of it as a freebie. You spend your time studying, you go to sleep, and your brain's going to work for you at night and kind of lay down some of those memories. It's a win-win, my friends. Give it a try. Okay. And the other thing is manage your stress. Now, I'm going to spend a minute here. We all face stress. Exams can be stressful. Different life events can be very stressful. So we have to find strategies for ourselves to manage this stress. And I want to say it's okay to have a little stress, right? that little bit, oh my gosh, I have an exam in an hour. You maybe get those little butterflies. That's okay. That's very human. The nice thing is, once again, at VCC, if the stress gets big, or if you need to, talk to some professionals that can help you sort of look at ways to manage stress, anxiety, life issues, we do have a counseling service, which is confidential and absolutely free for students. And I'll be talking a bit more about that once the course gets underway. And it's a great resource that we have for you. Once again, free. The other thing is, come to class prepared, right? Do the readings. Get to look at the information, because you cannot remember everything from the word go. You're going to have to see the information 2, 3, 4 times before you start to lay it down, okay? So you should come to a lab or a lecture and be somewhat familiar. So what would I expect? I would expect that you've at least read through that part of the textbook that we're covering. Now, do I expect you're going to memorize every detail? No, but at least you'll have an inkling. You'll have a sense as to some of the words, some of the themes, some of the concepts, all right? Anything you get stuck on, write it down on a sheet of paper. So when we do get together, I'll always leave time at the end of every time we get together where you can ask questions about this. So remember, this is about you being an effective learner, and it does take a little bit of organization. Okay, now it's often about time management. We seem to often have not enough hours in the day, but we can try and maximize it by trying to do good time management and develop a weekly study schedule. Right? The other thing is to take good notes, and here's an important one. Don't rely just on my PowerPoint notes alone. They're not a substitute for you making notes. Something about you making notes from my talks, from my notes, from the textbook is the key driver to getting those long-term effective memories, okay? You might benefit from recording lectures. I actually have a different take on this. I ask students not to record the lecture. The reason is, you're not going to go back and listen to 3 hours of a lecture again. I know people do it, but they never listen. The other thing too is, I think you have to also get used to being in that moment, okay? Because often I think what happens when people record lectures is that they use it for a substitute for not taking on-the-fly notes. And learning how to take notes on the fly is one of the greatest skills. So I'm going to ask you, don't record lectures. The other thing too is, because especially we'll be using Zoom, other students will be interacting. Other students' images may be up on the screen, and they deserve their privacy. So I ask you, don't record lectures. If there's something you have to go over again, I'll spend time with you, or we'll find a way, okay? And really find what works best for you. So there's a little bit of an experiment to this. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to do the little intro and mention something about study skills. Then we'll move on in subsequent videos to start talking about some more of the content of this chapter.